Welcome to Work This Way, a labor and employment podcast. I'm Tina Emerson, joined here today with Jennie Cluvarius, a Maynard Nexsen labor and employment lawyer. How are you, Jennie?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Tina.
Glad to see you. And today we're welcoming back some of our favorite friends of the podcast, Joan Moore and Mim Munzel of the Arbor Consulting Group. They are a national human resources consulting firm specializing in HR risk management and regulatory compliance. Joan and Mim, thanks for being here today.
Thank you. We're happy to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you back. We have a timely episode today. Today is March 6th, and there's a lot going on in the federal government. So we're going to chat today about changes for federal contractors under the second Trump administration. Joan, a lot's changing, and it's happening so quickly. Can you start us off by explaining exactly what Executive Order 14173 did?
Yes, though I have to put a caveat in there. This is what we know today. It's a constantly changing landscape, so things could change even tomorrow. So, but let me tell you what happened now. So we have this new Executive Order 14173, and it rescinded Executive Order 11246, which covered affirmative action and non-discrimination for women and minorities for all federal contractors and federal subcontractors. Now, when I say federal contractors throughout this podcast, that also includes subcontractors because the rules and the regulations are exactly the same. It said it ended illegal DE&I programs. Now, that has caused a lot of confusion, as you can imagine. What is an illegal DE&I program? Nobody really knows. And even a judge recently put an injunction against some of the certification provisions of this new executive order because it's too unclear about what an illegal DE&I program is. It also rescinded the executive order that contractors followed. Now, you'll be interested to know that in the federal affirmative action programs, there are no quotas, there are no preferences, and there are no set-asides. Those were actually not allowed by the regulation. The problem, I think, is that so many in the media and whatnot got that wrong, and they would equate affirmative action and DE&I with preferences, but that's not how it works. So as long as your programs don't have preferences, quotas, or set-asides, it should not be considered illegal. But there's so much confusion even among the government officials. So that's kind of what we're dealing with. What it did not do is it did not rescind the protected veterans regulations nor the individual with disability regulations. Those are statutes. They cannot be overturned by an executive order. So all those requirements that you have in the vets and disabled still have to take place, still have to be implemented. And so Mim's going to talk a little bit about there's a lot you still have to do. We've got kind of a long laundry list, I have to tell you. So hang in with us as we go over all the things you still need to accomplish.
Okay, so great segue, Mim, then into what federal contractors do still need to do in light of this new executive order.
Okay, so first of all, you still need to prepare an annual vets, and I'll call it IWD. It's individuals with disabilities. That is language that's in the regulations. An annual affirmative action plan and the required reports, annual reports. And those would include the data collection reports, an annual evaluation, and a hiring benchmark report. So that's all, annual information that you are supposed to collect and have at your fingertips. Then you continue to list all your positions with the state in which the job resides. So the state unemployment office is where those get listed, and that's not a change. You probably have been doing that on an ongoing basis. Mm-hmm. And then as well, you want to try to get your positions in front of the veterans representative for your area. Okay. Additionally, you want to continue to do the outreach for vets and IWD. So whatever you've been doing in that regard. And there is that 3-year rolling evaluation of whether your outreach is effective or not. Yeah. That's still in play. So you've got to keep all those records. And then you still need to prepare and post and disseminate your equal employment opportunity policy. And then Joan, do you want to continue on here?
I'll continue on with the list.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have to continue to notify applicants and employees that they can view your vets and disabled AAP. I don't know if you were aware of that, but that is a requirement. That's why when we do the required data collection and annual reports, we don't put them in the vets and disabled AAP because that can be viewed by outsiders. You also have to file the annual, it's called Vets 4212 report. That's usually due every September 30th. You still have to file an EO1 report. That date has kind of changed. It changed through the pandemic, so we're not quite sure when that's coming out. But you can see by the fact you have to do these reports, you still have to do that self-identification, and you have to, for employees, do that self-identification for women, minorities. To do that, you have to have certain federal posters still have to be up. You have to every 5 years, and this is one we're finding our clients are having a little trouble remembering. Every 5 years, you have to resurvey your employee population to see if their individual with disability status has changed. And so it's every 5 years, so on and so forth, forever type of thing. You have to have the VETS IWD clause in all your subcontracts and certain vendor contracts. You have all your job listings have to still have a tagline. So the tagline that the OLCCP so far has allowed you to use is EOE, comma, including disability/vets. Or you can say equal opportunity employer. Saying you're an equal opportunity employer is not illegal. That's perfectly fine to say you're giving everyone equal opportunity. Mim mentioned doing the annual review of your personnel processes, and you want to kind of document that, so you've got that. The assessment of the outreach. You have to send annual letters of your commitment to protected veterans and individuals with disability, to unions, government subcontractors, recruiting firms, and certain vendors. That's an annual requirement to do that. You can do it by email, by the way. You don't have to send letters out. You've got to do periodic reviews of your mental and physical qualifications on your jobs to make sure you're not screening out disabled veterans or disabled employees. You have to continue to track all reasonable accommodations, not just for employees, but also for applicants. And you want to make sure you have a tracking form to do that, because that's a pretty common audit question is, what accommodations have been requested and what did you do about it? You want to make sure you have good documentation on that. You have to continue to have language on your website that says if you're an individual with a disability and you're unable to use the website, that you can, you've got a go around. You can somehow contact HR to have a go around so you can express interest in jobs. You have to have protected veterans and individuals with disability in your anti-harassment policy. And you also have to continue their record keeping requirements. There were also with EO 11246, but there also are for vets and disabled, where you have to keep all records concerning sourcing, recruiting, hiring, termination, promotions, and everything for a period of 1 to 2 years, depending on the size of your organization. And our clients are always kind of surprised to find out that includes interview notes. So if you if you make interview notes, if your managers make interview notes, you must retain those. And we have had audits where they have asked for all interview notes. And if you don't have that, that's potentially a violation. So FYI, just be aware. Now, we know in the past there's been this affirmative action plan verification and certification portal. We don't know what's going to happen with that. We don't know if that's going to still be used for the vets and disabled. We don't know if you're going to have to certify certain things through that. It's a real open question, and we haven't received any guidance on that yet.
Great. So one huge critical takeaway from today's podcast is that simply because Executive Order 14173 has been instituted, you still, as a federal contractor, employer, have a plethora of additional obligations aside from the women and minorities affirmative action plans, which have been rolled back outside of that. And I think that's caused some mass confusion with some folks thinking everything has gone away, and it hasn't.
Right.
So, follow-up question for you all. The OFCCP had the internet applicant rule, which I want you to talk to us about what that is, and then tell us your opinions on whether federal contractors should continue to follow that internet applicant rule when reporting numbers for Section 503 and the VEVRA required reports.
The OFCCP's Internet Applicant Rule was in Executive Order 11246, Women and Minorities. Now, we're kind of recommending that you still continue to follow that. You still do disposition codes. You would still distinguish between an applicant and just a job seeker. That's really critical when you're in any kind of a defense, either an audit or litigation or whatnot, to not be counting people who are not truly applicants. It was a 4-pronged criteria that you had to follow for an internet applicant. Now, you don't have to do that anymore, but I would keep the process going because you have to turn in applicant flow in order to do the required vets and disabled reporting. There's data collection for both veterans. There's data collection for individuals with disability. There's an annual evaluation, and there's also a hiring benchmark for veterans. Now, the government has set those goals in the hiring benchmark. We don't calculate them like we did for the women and minorities, but you want to make sure you're dispositioning and you're still running some sort of, I would recommend some sort of disparity analysis to see how are you doing? Are you have any kind of a problem? I know many have recommended that you keep the self-identification going, not just for vets and disabled, but also for women and minorities. I mean, you need to do that at the employee stage anyways, because you have an EO1 report that you have to do. And many states have requirements, like the state of Minnesota requires you to do this. The California Pay Data Report, the Illinois one, you've got to have all that sex, race, ethnicity information to do those reports. So definitely for your employee population, I would keep it going. I think a question is on the applicant stage, do you keep that going? Now, you don't have a government requirement on the women and minorities to do that. However, you could use that information to demonstrate you don't have an illegal DE&I program because this is who's coming through. Everyone's getting an equal opportunity to be considered. You are selecting the best qualified, and this is how the numbers come out. So it could be, you could use that for a certain kind of defense for that. In fact, there are some other things that we kind of just want to give heads up to some of our clients, but I'll let Mim cover those just to be aware of them.
Sure. Religious discrimination is one that we expect to see more of under this administration. And so you just want to revisit your religious accommodation policies and make sure that, they are appropriate under this new guidance. You can probably expect more I-9 reviews. We are hearing of I-9 reviews at this point. They have tended to focus on industries like manufacturing, construction, food production, and so forth. But the thing to note is the I-9s, if they're done incorrectly, there's a fine associated with each one of them. And the money gets up there pretty fast. So you want to be sure that your I-9s are in good shape.
And they're usually, many are wrong.
So true.
So many of them are wrong. Because we used to audit them. It was a standard part of an on-site audit. And I can't tell you how many of them were wrong. It's a form that's designed to be filled out incorrectly.
Right.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is.
So just high level, Title VII is still in place, and all the protected classes in Title VII are still protected. Including, sex, race, and ethnicity. So that is still in effect, and people need to be aware of that. It's not going to go away by an executive order because it's a statute. The OCCP has directed a cease and desist enforcement for VEVRA, that's for the veterans, and Section 503 for the individuals with disability. We don't know what that means. You still have an obligation to do everything that we've listed so far in the podcast. So It may mean that their audits look different. We just don't know, but that is in existence today. And so obviously something we're keeping our eye on. If you have any affinity groups, you're going to want to be sure that they are open to everyone so that there could be no discrimination alleged against you for that. In the blue states, so-called blue states, there is more affirmative action activity at this point. And so you want to pay attention if you have state contracts, there may be requirements that you do affirmative action plans. We're running into this with several of our clients.
Or even city.
Even city, exactly.
Even cities,
you may still need to produce a women and minorities affirmative action plan under those state requirements. We've seen some of that come through.
Yeah.
If you're a construction contractor, if you have federally assisted money, so coming from the feds, flowing through the state, you want to be sure that you're aware of any city or state requirements in those. Take a look at your diversity programs. You don't want to necessarily be referencing, well, you certainly don't want to be referencing preference, quotas, or set-asides in any of your diversity materials. And then stay tuned. Legislators are talking about codifying the women and minorities regulations. And if that were to happen, we suspect it won't be right away. But this potentially could come back in a different form. So bottom line, everything's in flux and we're just monitoring, everything every day.
Yeah.
Yes, and we've been tracking that. I know there was a bill introduced in the House very recently to try to codify the contents of Executive Order 11246 and the underlying kind of regulations that have been issued. Whether or not that will be successful with the current makeup of Congress, I guess, is just yet to be seen. But I agree with you all. I kind of anticipate that that's going to be coming back at some point in one form or the other, whether it's via executive order or via statute. So yes, stay tuned.
Stay tuned is definitely the phrase of the day. The pace at which things are moving. We never really know how to predict what's next. But thank you for being with us to talk through it. You've been a wealth of information as always. So thanks, Joan and Mim, for being here with us again. And thank you, Jennie. And we will see you next time on Work This Way.